What if I told you that one of the most powerful reforestation stories on Earth did not begin in a rainforest, but on hills so dry, so exhausted, and so stripped of life that many people believed they were already lost? In Ethiopia, entire mountainsides once looked like open wounds. Rain would fall, but instead of soaking into the ground, it rushed downhill, carrying the soil with it. Farms failed, springs disappeared. Villages watched their land become thinner, harder, and less forgiving every year. But then something unexpected happened. People did not wait for a miracle. They built one, stone by stone, trench by trench, seedling by seedling. And over time, barren hills began to hold water again. Grass returned, trees rose from the slopes, birds came back, and places that once looked like the edge of a desert started to look like forests. This is the story of how Ethiopia turned barren hills into living landscapes, and why the lesson is much bigger than trees. To understand this story, you have to understand Ethiopia's geography. Ethiopia is often called the roof of Africa. Much of the country is made of highlands, mountains, deep valleys, and steep slopes. These landscapes are beautiful, but they are also fragile. For generations, millions of people depended on these hills for almost everything: food, firewood, grazing land, building materials, and water. But when too many trees are cut, when animals graze the same slopes again and again, and when farming expands onto steep land, the soil begins to disappear. And soil is not just dirt. Soil is memory. It holds water from last night's rain. It holds nutrients from plants that died years ago. It holds the future of every seed a farmer puts into the ground. When soil is gone, a landscape can still receive rain and still remain thirsty. That was the crisis Ethiopia faced. In a healthy forest, rain does not attack the land. It is slowed by leaves, absorbed by roots, and filtered through the soil. But on a bare hillside, rain becomes a force of destruction. Drop by drop, it hits exposed earth like millions of tiny hammers. Then the water begins to run. It gathers speed. It cuts channels. It carries away the topsoil, the richest and most important layer of the land. And the tragedy is that the people who need the rain the most can lose it the fastest. A storm may last 1 hour, but the damage can last for years. Fields become less productive. Wells run dry earlier. Families need to walk farther for firewood. Cattle find less grass. And when the next drought arrives, the land has fewer defenses. This is why Ethiopia's reforestation story is not just about planting trees. It is about rebuilding the entire relationship between water, soil, plants, animals, and people. The first step was simple, but not easy. Before the hills could grow forests again, they had to stop bleeding soil. Across many degraded areas, communities began building physical barriers across slopes: stone terraces, soil bunds, trenches, check dams, and small structures designed to slow water down. To someone passing by, these may look like simple lines of rocks, but they are actually landscape surgery. A stone terrace interrupts the speed of runoff. A trench catches water long enough for it to sink into the ground. A check dam traps sediment before it can wash away. A soil bund gives seeds a safer place to grow. These structures do not fight nature. They help nature do what it was trying to do all along. Slow the water, hold the soil, give life a second chance. And this is where Ethiopia's restoration became powerful, because it combined ancient common sense with organized community action. There is a reason this transformation did not happen by machines alone. It happened because people showed up. In many places, restoration was done through community mobilization. Villagers worked together to build terraces, protect hillsides, plant seedlings, and manage land that everyone depended on. This matters because a forest cannot be restored by planting trees in one season and walking away. Someone has to protect the young plants. Someone has to keep grazing animals out until the land recovers. Someone has to repair terraces after heavy rain. Someone has to decide which areas should be farmed, which should be rested, and which should be allowed to regenerate. That is why the human side of this story is so important. Ethiopia's hills did not turn green because nature was left alone for one afternoon. They turned green because communities made a long-term deal with the land. And if you enjoy stories where human effort changes the fate of an entire landscape, follow the channel, because this is exactly the kind of hidden transformation we explore here. One of the most important tools in Ethiopia's restoration story is called an area exclosure. The idea is almost shocking in its simplicity. You take a degraded hillside, and instead of using it for constant grazing or firewood collection, the community agrees to close it off for recovery. No goats stripping every new leaf, no cattle compacting the soil, no cutting every young branch before it becomes a tree. At first, it may look like nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, the land is waking up. Seeds that were already in the soil begin to sprout. Roots from surviving plants expand. Grasses return first, then shrubs, then young trees. Birds arrive, carrying more seeds. Insects return. Shade begins to form. Moisture lasts longer. The forest does not always need to be created from zero. Sometimes it only needs protection from constant pressure. In that sense, an area exclosure is not just a fence around land. It is a pause button for destruction. And when the land finally gets that pause, its recovery can be surprisingly fast. Here is the part many reforestation stories get wrong. Planting trees is not the same as restoring a forest. A seedling planted in dry, compacted, eroded soil may die before it ever becomes part of the landscape. If rain runs away, if animals eat it, if the wrong species is planted in the wrong place, the campaign may look successful for one day and fail quietly over the next year. Ethiopia's most effective restoration efforts understood this difference. The goal was not only to put trees into the ground, the goal was to rebuild the conditions that allow trees to survive. That means water harvesting, soil conservation, protection from overgrazing, local participation, choosing species that fit the climate and the community's needs, monitoring what survives, not just what gets planted, because a forest is not an event. A forest is a system. It is roots holding soil, leaves cooling the air, fungi trading nutrients, birds spreading seeds, and humans learning when to take and when to let the land rest. The most important thing Ethiopia brought back to many hillsides was not trees. It was time. Time for rainwater to slow down. Time for soil to absorb moisture. Time for underground water to recharge. Time for seeds to germinate before the ground dried out again. When stone lines and trenches interrupt runoff, the rain no longer escapes immediately. More water enters the soil, and when more water enters the soil, everything changes. Grass survives longer into the dry season. Tree roots reach deeper. Springs can flow more steadily. Crops below the hillsides may receive less destructive flooding and more reliable moisture. This is the hidden engine of restoration. You may look at a green hill and think the trees saved the land, but often the first hero was water that finally stayed long enough to matter. And once water stays, life has a way of negotiating its return. Restoration does not happen all at once. It begins with small changes that trigger bigger ones. A little more grass means a little less erosion. Less erosion means more soil remains in place. More soil means more water can be stored. More water means more plants survive. More plants mean more shade. More shade means cooler ground. Cooler ground means slower evaporation. Then leaves fall. They become organic matter. Organic matter feeds the soil. The soil feeds new roots. And suddenly the landscape is no longer collapsing. It is building. This is why degraded hills can surprise us. They may look dead from a distance, but many are not dead. They are exhausted. They are overused. They are trapped in a cycle where every rainstorm removes part of their future. Break that cycle, and the land can start writing a different story. In Ethiopia, that story has been written across hillsides, watersheds, and villages, not as one perfect miracle, but as thousands of local recoveries stitched together. In recent years, Ethiopia's restoration effort became even more visible through the Green Legacy Initiative, a national campaign that turned tree planting into a public movement. Millions of people have taken part. Schools, government offices, local communities, and volunteers have planted seedlings across the country. The numbers are enormous, and the ambition is even larger: to fight deforestation, restore degraded land, improve climate resilience, and build a greener future. For many Ethiopians, planting a tree is not just an environmental act. It is a statement. It says, This land is not finished. It says, our children deserve shade, water, soil, and hope. But the green legacy also raises a critical question that every country must face. Is planting enough? The answer is no. The real victory is not the number of seedlings planted on day one. The real victory is how many survive year after year, and whether those trees become part of healthy, functioning landscapes. That is where Ethiopia's deeper lesson becomes valuable for the world. This story is inspiring, but it is not simple. Restoring land is messy. Some seedlings die. Some species may not fit the place where they are planted. Some communities may struggle when land is closed off from grazing because animals need somewhere to feed. Some projects may count trees planted without enough information about trees surviving. And in a country as large and complex as Ethiopia, there are also political, economic, and social pressures that affect conservation work. So, the honest version of this story is not, Ethiopia planted trees and everything was solved. The honest version is more powerful than that. Ethiopia showed that even severely degraded hillsides can recover when restoration is treated as a system, not a photo opportunity. The work requires patience. It requires local knowledge. It requires maintenance. It requires protecting young landscapes during their weakest years. And it requires measuring success, not by what looks good in a single season, but by what continues to live when the cameras are gone. There is a science behind this hope. Trees and shrubs stabilize slopes with their roots. Their leaves reduce the impact of rain. Their shade cools the ground. Their litter adds organic matter to the soil. Their presence creates microclimates where other plants can survive. In dry landscapes, even a small improvement in vegetation can change the way water moves. More plant cover means less runoff. Less runoff means less erosion. Less erosion means more fertile soil remains where it is needed, and as soil improves, restoration becomes easier. This is why landscape recovery often begins slowly, then accelerates. At first, people may only notice grass. Then they notice shrubs. Then they notice birds. Then they notice that a spring lasts longer. Then they notice that a hillside once written off as useless now has value again. Nature does not always return with dramatic explosions. Sometimes it returns quietly, one root at a time. Ethiopia's story matters far beyond Ethiopia. Around the world, land degradation is one of the most overlooked crises of our time. It does not always arrive like a hurricane or a wildfire. Sometimes it arrives slowly, as thinner soil, weaker harvests, drier streams, and hills that can no longer hold themselves together. But the lesson from Ethiopia is that degraded land is not always a dead end. If water can be slowed, soil can rebuild. If grazing can be managed, vegetation can return. If communities benefit, protection can last. If tree planting is combined with landscape restoration, a hillside can become more than a symbol. It can become a functioning ecosystem again. And this is the idea that makes the story so powerful for American viewers and for viewers anywhere. We often imagine environmental damage as something too big to reverse. But sometimes the solution begins with something almost unbelievably humble. A line of stones, a closed hillside, a young tree, a community that refuses to give up. Look at these hills not as scenery, but as evidence. Evidence that landscapes have memory. Evidence that damage can be slowed. Evidence that recovery is not always fast, not always perfect, and not always easy. But it is possible. Every green slope represents labor most people will never see. Hands that moved stones, feet that walked miles with seedlings, meetings where communities argued and agreed. Years of waiting while tiny plants became roots, roots became shade, and shade became habitat. This is the part that makes Ethiopia's story unforgettable. The hills did not become forests because someone wished them green. They became forests because people changed the rules of the landscape. They stopped treating the land like an endless resource, and the land responded. So how did Ethiopia turn barren hills into forests? Not with one miracle, with a method. Slow the water, hold the soil, protect the land, bring communities into the work, plant trees where they can survive. Let nature regenerate where it already knows how. and keep going long after the first photos are taken. That is the real secret. The hills were not restored because people forced nature to obey. They were restored because people learned how to cooperate with it. And in a century where so many landscapes are under pressure, that lesson may be one of the most valuable ideas on Earth. A barren hill is not always the end of the story. Sometimes, it is just the beginning of a forest waiting for its chance to return.